So the title of today's class is WWJD. And if you're Christian, you probably know about this. Do you know what it means, bro? Yeah? What would Jim do? Right? Jim Jones, the cult leader, I guess. I don't know. Okay. Now, it's like this was really big a few years back. What would Jesus do? And I want to just kind of push up against this a little bit. And it's not just Jesus, but really would be most any leaders of pretty much every religion who talk about this. But go to this next slide. There is this kind of sense in Christianity, in the Abrahamic tradition. So in Judaism and in Christianity and Islam, who all have the same God, by the way, for sure. But also, we can go to obviously Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism and all sorts of. But this idea that those who shut their ears to the cries of the poor will be ignored in their own time of need. I mean, those are like some really serious words that presumably would come from God. I mean, presumably that's the word of God, and that's really serious. They turn your eyes on the poor. So think about who is the poor, and who constitutes the poor. And what does that mean? And then I think about this country, and we are primarily a Christian country in the sense that, most of the early founders of this country were identified with Christianity. Obviously, they didn't act on that in some really significant ways, but in other ways, they very much did, and that was a belief system. And in the country itself, there's this sort of mythology that we're a country, a refuge for poor people and persecuted people from around the world. And that's what really makes America great and makes us really strong and so on, right? And so then I go to the next slide. And so, these are the words that are on the Statue of Liberty. And I think, okay, those are really powerful words. And, give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, right? I mean, this is like, give us your poor. We'll take the refuse from your teeming shore. We will take them into the United States, and they will be part of the fabric of what is the United States of America. And so, all right. So now I start questioning, like, all right, what are we talking about here? And then go to the next slide. I think of the world itself. Like, what's the world look like? And I want to just kind of give you a bit of a snapshot of that. 7.9 billion people, and 800 million people living on $1.90 or less a day. And that doesn't mean you can't really make the argument that but $1.90 doesn't go very far in the U.S. or Switzerland or something, but it goes pretty far in a lot of other countries. It really doesn't go very far anywhere. 2.1 billion people living on $3 a day, and 20,000 children die every day in the world from easily curable problems, and diarrhea is the number one. So, drinking bad water, eating bad food, and, the number one cause of death. 20,000 children, that's 20,000 every day. That means, you fill up Beaver Stadium every 5 days with children. And then on the morning of the sixth day, they're gone, and it starts over again. And that just goes every day, day after day, month after month, year after year, right? And 72 million children are out of school. School-age children are not going to school. And most of them are not going to school because they have to help their parents in some way to earn a living. So children are working, right? There are more slaves in the world today at any point in human history. I mean, it's just kind of a tough world out there. No, it's very much a difficult situation in many, many places, okay? So, let's see where we stand. Okay, go to the next slide. Let me explain this to you, because this is global wealth, right? So if I ask one of you, are you rich, or are you poor, or whatever, you're gonna think about the people right around you, And you're going to think, well, how am I? How am I doing in relationship to the people right around me? Or you're going to think, am I rich? Well, I'm not rich like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, all these folks. So you're going to think like, oh, those are the rich people, so I'm not rich. But you're not going to think about people in rural Vietnam or, living in the, really deprivated communities in Vietnam, right? In Ho Chi Minh City, or, in rural Haiti or rural Mexico or rural West Virginia in the United States, as an example. You're not going to think about that. We're going to go up. So I want to give you a snapshot of what it would be. Okay, so go ahead. So this is the people on the left in the blue. These are people, this is wealth, global wealth. So you take all of your assets that you have and you subtract your debt, and that's your wealth, right? So, if you have a house and the house is worth $500,000, but, you owe the bank still $100,000 on that house, then the house, your wealth there is $400,000, right? So you add up all your wealth, your retirement savings and, your major purchases like cars and so on. And for those individuals that control $1 million or more, it's about 1% of the world's population. And so for those individuals that have wealth between $100,000 and $1 million, that's 11% of the world's population. Okay? So now what I want to tell you is that easily a third of you in here, your parents, are in the top 1%. Easily. Right? Easily. Some of you are in the top 1% because, if you just take your two parents or maybe your grandparents and you divide their estate up to your parents and then you divide that up into you, there's more than $1 million to go around to all the essential people. So that would mean you're in the top 1% also. But for sure, your parents. In the top 1%, y'all, the richest 1%. So what I'm saying here, there's a whole bunch of you that are in the richest 1% of the world's population. That means I can line up 99 people along here, and you are in the outlier here. This is you, the richest 1%. So, yeah, sure, Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos are far richer than you, but you still are in the top 1%. And I will say almost everybody in this class, everyone in this class, because we're just going to take the wealth of your parents and kind of divide it up with the kids, your grandparents with their kids, and so on. Almost everybody in this class is in the richest 11%. Okay? So now we're at the 12%. So I'm like, where do we stand? Are we rich? Are you poor? Are you this? Are you that? Well, the richest 12%, I'm thinking like, I'd like to be in the richest 12%. This is awesome. I'm in the richest 1%, but the richest 12% would be great. Let's be there. You know what I mean? That's pretty cool when you're looking at the whole world. But then you go down here and we say, okay, the poor. So look, at the richest 1% controls 46% of all the world's wealth. And the richest 1% plus the 11%. So that's like everybody in here except probably a few people. Okay? But all of you, by the time you die, give yourselves another, with a Penn State degree and, work for a while and, in another 30 years, you'll be in the certainly here. But look at this, control 85% of the world's wealth. That means us in here, our parents, and most of us in here control 85% of the world's wealth. These are rich. That's rich, 85%. And then we come down here, let's look at the 30%, 33%, which is kind of poor, and then miserable. 55% are just living in abject poverty, just miserable, just struggling to get by. Okay? So what we're going to talk about today is miserable, abject poverty. We're going to talk I want to just push up against some issues about so what is this? And what do we do about this? And what should we do about this? And should we do anything? So if you're a Christian, then if I put that quote up there and I think about other quotes and I think about things from the New Testament or, if you're Jewish, the Old Testament and, And if you're Muslim, the Quran, and if you're Taoist, the Tao Te Ching and all the Hindu writings and the Buddhist writings and so on. I think you got to come up with this idea that people either a God created us, or we've created a God that has this idea that you better be doing something about certainly the misery, those living in abject poverty. Maybe not here, because these people would feel like, yeah, I don't feel really that poor, because I keep looking to the really rich people, so I don't have to feel poor. But you look down and you think, okay, but we should be doing something here, right? Should we? I mean, that's a thought. That's that kind of liberal idea that we should be doing something. So I'm going to just move on this idea so that we can start to think about, hey, hang on a second, let's question that. All right, so here. So Gallup does this thing on a fairly regular basis. Gallup is a polling organization, and they're active all over the world. And they poll, tens of thousands of people all over the world. And they ask them a question. There are a lot of questions they ask, but one that they ask is, if you could leave your home, if you had the opportunity to leave your home, would you? If leaving your home would be permanent relocation. So would you like to permanently leave your home and go somewhere else? So of the almost 8 billion or so people in the world, 750 million, or about 15%, say, yep, I would do that. And it's not more, even though lots and lots of people who are living in abject poverty still don't want to leave their homes, because that's their homes. And people don't want to leave, it's like your families. Why don't you divorce your families? Those of you who hate your parents probably hate you, or they treat you in a really horrific way. And one thing maybe you just who knows, you come from a completely dysfunctional family, but you don't leave it because it's your family. It's your home. I don't want to leave here. People don't want to leave where they're at. How many of you would permanently leave the United States? Forget about now we have cell phones and so on and so forth. So change a little bit about how many of us would really go and never come back. It's a question, right? One person anyway. I would probably, but I'm different. Of those people, of the 750 million people, we say, where do you want to go? And 158 million of them in 2018, 158 million that they're able to estimate, and we're pretty good at estimating these things, 158 million say we want to go to the United States. That was their number one choice. Yep, want to go to the U.S. So first off, we have this idea that people around the world all want to come to the U.S. Everybody wants to come to the U.S. They really don't want to come to the U.S. First off, most people want to stay home. And more of the 750 million would stay home anyway if they had decent jobs and so on and so forth, right? And not everyone wants to come to the U.S. There are other places that they want to go, okay? But nonetheless, 158 million people is a lot of people. It's a lot of people who would be banging on the door of the United States to say, hey, well, I want to come here. I'm willing to leave my home and I want to come here. So now we got to say, whoa, okay, what are we going to do with that? What do you do? What kind of policies do we have for people who are wanting to come into the U.S.? And how do you do it, right? Because you can't just let everybody, you can't just, first off, you can't have people living here without papers and without legal recognition. Nobody wants that. It's just a really bad way to organize a society. You don't want people living outside the law. So that's why undocumented immigrants, people say illegal immigrants, but I'll say undocumented. I'll say that, I always use undocumented just as a way to recognize Native Americans, for whom everybody is illegal, for Native Americans. So we'll say undocumented. So it's you got to keep track of people. It's just not really a good thing. Okay? So now we have, and a lot of people want to come. Yeah, we got to be able to manage this. Okay, we are a nation of immigrants, but it's well, come on, let's look at it. Okay, maybe God's telling us, yeah, you got to look out for the poor, but she is like, man, but we don't always listen to her, to God, right? It's a her. Let's assume God's a her. We don't always listen to her anyway. So like, do we listen now? Do we not listen now? Like, you gotta wrestle with this, right?